want to give you an update on the details we know about the officer-involved shooting last night. Now, our crime scene work is not yet complete, and the caveat today is much like it was last night. Some of these details are subject to change because, once again, we're talking to you now still within a few hours of the shooting, and there's a lot of crime scene investigation that's not been completed, but we pretty well have a grip on the basics. So let me point out what we started, where we were last night and what we know today. The task force members found Francis Perry driving the vehicle on Cumbie Road. They knew he was a violent felon without a driver's license and a history of resisting arrest and fleeing to elude. We suspected that he may have dope. So the decision by the supervisor was, hey, it's afternoon drive time traffic. Let's follow this guy until he stops someplace, because if we light him up, certainly he's going to flee and we're going to have a dangerous situation for the community. So they follow old Francis, and he pulls into 2737 Gulfview Street in Lakeland. 3 detectives exit the vehicle after they park behind him and turn their lights on. One detective goes to the passenger side of the vehicle, one goes to the driver's side of the vehicle, and the 3rd detective goes in front of the vehicle to take down a guy by the name of William Clue. William, as Francis is arriving in the car, William is walking down the driveway toward him. So our one detective is now in front of the car and William's on the ground. As William said later, I did what they told me. I got down on the ground. The detectives immediately tell him, let me see your hands, roll down the windows, open the doors, because the windows on the side of the vehicle are very, very dark and they can just barely see in. Our detective in front of the car says he continues to do everything from show his hands to go down to the right side of his body. So he says this is over and over and over. William Clue, who turns out to be a pretty darn good witness for us, says in his estimation it was a minute to a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes, that the detectives kept saying, roll down the windows, open the door, roll down the windows, open the door, show us your hands, show us your hands. The only detective that has a good view into the vehicle is the one in the front. And he says the guy alternately shows his hands and then goes down by his body. The detective on the passenger side of the vehicle retreats back to get what we call a hooligan tool out of the patrol vehicle in order to knock the windows, the side windshield, out of the vehicle. So as he's coming back with the hooligan tool, just as he prepares to hit the window to shatter the passenger side window, Clue goes back down to his right-hand side, comes up with what we know now as a 9mm Glock that's stolen, and begins to shoot at not only the detective with a hooligan tool, but a 4th detective who's arrived. So Francis Perry is shooting at 2 of the detectives, and of course they retreat, get a tactical stance, and immediately start shooting into the vehicle at Perry. We shot approximately 28 times before Perry quit the gunfight. We know that Perry shot at least 5 times at us, And quite frankly, I'm not sure how he missed the two detectives on the right side of the car. We see at least two outgoing projectiles that struck some part of the passenger side. We suspect the other three went out through the broken window and are who knows where they are at this time. That crime scene search is still on. As soon as the fight is over and Perry quits shooting at us, we quit shooting at him. Detectives immediately pull him out of the car, have him down on the ground, and begin CPR and life-saving measures, calling EMS and fire rescue to help. It's important to understand these detectives from a high-intensity drug trafficking area, experienced detectives, were in a gunfight for their life last night, and they won. It was an incredibly dangerous situation. EMS arrives, they take him to the hospital. He undergoes emergency surgery, but quite frankly, there's no way to save Perry because he's full of holes. We shot him at least 5 times, maybe more. We'll have a better idea once the autopsy is completed today. The emergency room surgeons gave us an estimate of how many times he was shot. Just for clarity's sake here, this is not what you watch on television. On television you watch, you shoot one time, the guy goes down, he gives up. We know when Perry started shooting, he had the gun sideways when he started the fight, and he shot at us at least 5 times, and we shot at him. 4 detectives shot a total of 28 times in a matter of seconds before the gunfight was over. So now the gunfight's over. Let's tell you what we found in the vehicle. First off, we obviously found the suspect's 9mm Glock firearm that is stolen out of Polk County. That investigation's ongoing. It had 1 live round in the chamber, and the magazine otherwise was empty. We found 2 bags of methamphetamine laying in plain view on the back seat of the car, about 6.5 ounces, probably about $4,500 street value. We found when we pull Perry out of the car that he had a nylon holster on his right side. He had the gun holstered and on him, and that's why when he went from hands up to the right side, he was going to the gun. Perry never, ever communicated or said a word to us. He never made any effort to comply. All he had to do was comply. Just do what the detectives asked him to do. Well, let's talk about the choices he made yesterday. We didn't choose to shoot Francis Perry. He chose for us to shoot him, and we accommodated him. Here's what he knew, some of which we knew. He was driving yesterday afternoon without a driver's license. He was in possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. He was possessing a stolen firearm. He was in possession of a trafficking amount of methamphetamine, which he didn't even try to hide in the car. It was in plastic baggies, just laying on the back seat. He was a fugitive from justice. He had an outstanding felony warrant with 2 felony charges. He's been out of prison only 5.5 months. His fugitive from justice, his outstanding VOP felony warrants were from not complying. Now, you would think a guy that just got out of prison 5.5 months ago wouldn't be ready to go back to prison, would go along with what his probation officer said, but he didn't, and the warrants were outstanding. Francis Perry is a documented, pedigreed thug, and he has been his entire adult life. But let's talk about his first criminal charge when he was 10 years of age. The Winter Haven Police Department charged him with shoplifting. He was charged with his first weapons offense when he was 11 years old. He had an incredible juvenile arrest record where he was provided with programs and opportunities, but he ignored all that. When you look at his criminal arrest history, there's what you see. There's the guy that chose to shoot it out with the detectives last night. He's a bad man. And today he's a dead man. And he chose that. We can only surmise, ladies and gentlemen.
You're rubbing the mic. Here. Sorry.
We can only surmise, ladies and gentlemen, that this guy decided that he wanted to end his life here, that this was really a suicide by cop. He knew he was surrounded by a lot of law enforcement officers, and he knew that to shoot at one or two of them was certainly going to result in him being shot. And he knew with him there with one gun and at least 4 of them there that it was to be certain death. He chose this. He chose every bit of it. He was in total control, and all he had to do was comply, and nothing like this would have happened. I submit to you that these detectives went over and above to keep from having to use a firearm against him to take control of it. But it was his choice. When you live a life like this, then you're the one that decides your fate. And he decided his fate when he lived this life. Are there any questions about that? We also had the chiefs here. They said what they had to say last night, but we're here to answer any questions if you have that.
This is the biggest fear for deputies, the career criminals who will do whatever it takes to avoid prison.
Yeah, it is. Let me show you one more thing about this. I hear over and over and over, I watch on the national news, well, we got this tough criminal justice system. Do you think our criminal justice system is forgiving? This guy had chance after chance after chance after chance. He went to prison on 3 different occasions, not for a long period of time. But this is the kind of people we're dealing with in the street. It's not you and I. It's not what I call normal America. It's criminal America. And you either hold them accountable or they overrun your community. that don't make the news and you don't see. It's not uncommon for people to sit in their car and ignore us, not to talk to us, not to engage with us, not to say, no, I'm not rolling down my window, just to ignore the fact that we're there. He kept going down to his right side. We didn't see a gun. We didn't think by him ignoring us, he's doing the hand motions. We didn't think there was going to be a gunfight. We were prepared for a gunfight. But the detective in the front of the vehicle, when it erupted like it did, the good Lord was looking out for him. Tactically, we don't ever want to get in crossfires. He was potentially in a crossfire situation, but he stood his ground and shot through the front windshield of the vehicle in order to protect and save the lives of the detectives that were on the passenger side. It was a tough situation that didn't have to happen and shouldn't have happened. But once again, we don't choose to shoot people. They choose for us to shoot them. Compliance is a beautiful thing. All they have to do is comply. If they disagree with it, we'll work it out later. Okay, any other questions on this?
Is there a standard procedure to go through some sort of review of the shooting?
Yes, we went through that last night, but there'll be an investigation, a shooting investigation by our homicide team. In addition to that, the state attorney's office was called to the scene. They'll do an independent and separate investigation. The medical examiner now would do an investigation. Our administrative investigations will do another investigation. Our narcotics team will complete the narcotics investigation that they started against him as well. When we finish our packages and put them all together, then we will send them to the chiefs of the 3 departments, and then they will follow their agency policies as far as investigating as well. And for those of you who weren't here last night, this was the high-intensity drug trafficking group, okay? And here's how it works. We had representatives from Lake Wales, Haines City, Winter Haven, and the Sheriff's Office on this team. All 4 of the agencies shot, okay? They are obviously very experienced, very trained police officers, as are our detectives. They were operating last night under the authority of the sheriff. They are sworn in as deputy sheriffs to be a part of the task force. So not only are they stellar examples of the different police departments, but their authority last night came from the sheriff because of their HIDTA task force duties and responsibilities.
How many officers total then on paid leave or on?
4. 4. Which is normal, routine. We have a set professional standard protocol, state-of-the-art protocol, that these deputies, or deputy and officers will go through.
Can you tell us what agencies the 4 represented?
Haines City, Lake,
So each of the.
it was Haines City, Lake Wales, Winter Haven, and the Sheriff's Office.
So 1 from each.
1 from each, right. They do undercover work, and on this particular case, they were focused on him. He was a bad dude in the community. Bad meaning past tense. Okay. Now, let me change to this. This is the face, the different faces of Victor Manns Jr. And the reason we show the different pictures because you can see how he changes his appearance. This picture on the bottom left next to the one in the street clothes was his arrest last night. Let me go back to the beginning. We can fill in some details for you today that we didn't release before. This all started on August the 26th, during the daytime. There's an app called Let Go, and you advertise items that you want to sell on the Let Go app. First off, I highly recommend that if you're going to use an app to sell stuff like this, which obviously is a very dangerous thing to do, use the Let Go app, because they will quickly get us the information, which will help us find the person that killed you. They were remarkable. They were they're actually located in Spain, and we worked with them, and they worked with us with a real sense of urgency and emergency. They were fantastic. We can't say enough. But here's the deal. On August 26th, on the Let Go app, a seller said, I've got an iPad for sale. So our suspect here, using a fictitious name, said, I'll buy it. Can you meet me at the Walgreens? And that's what happened. During the daytime.
No, he's the first one.
First one, at the Walgreens store, Ariana in South Florida. So the seller shows up with the iPad, and guess what? Victor Manns grabs the iPad and he runs. So we've got a theft. September 1st, in the city of Lakeland. The first, August 26th, was in the city of Lakeland, worked by LPD. September 1st, in the city of Lakeland, worked by LPD. Seller goes online to sell a cell phone. Victor Manns, using the same name, says, hey, I'll buy the cell phone. Can you meet me at the Crystal Grove Apartments? The seller arrives in his vehicle, and he shows him the cell phone for sale. The seller, or our victim, has to move his car, so Victor Manns gets in the passenger side with him. They move the car from wherever it's sitting. At that time, Victor pulls a gun, and he points it at our victim, the seller, and says, I'll take that cell phone, and by the way, I'll take your other cell phone that you're wearing. So at gunpoint, he robs our seller, our victim, of 2 cell phones. And for good measure, hits our victim in the head with the barrel of the gun as he gets out of the car. Lakeland Police works that on September 1st. Both of our victims in these LPD theft and robbery describe this guy to a T, down to some burn marks he's got on his arms. So now it's Sunday, and Blake Fitz has gone to, once again, the Let Go app to say that he has an iPhone for sale. Victor Manns, using his fraudulent name, says, I'm ready to buy. They agree to meet at the Family Dollar on South Cumbie Road. They pull up. Blake shows him the iPhone that's plugged in, but doesn't let him hold it through the driver's side window. At that time, Victor pats his pockets like he's going for his money, reaches in, snatches the phone, and starts to run. When he starts to run, the passenger, Jeffrey Morrow, rolls out with a shotgun. At that time, the suspect hollers at Jeffrey Morrow to stop, I have a gun, and he begins shooting. And he shoots at Jeffrey 4 times, striking him 1 time in the face, instantly killing him. He runs off. Of course, we arrive, our investigation begins. We're working with Let Go app, and that's when we discover that Victor Manns is our man. So we're putting the case together, and you can see the details. It's a case where we first have to figure out where's the cell phone, then who's in possession of the cell phone. And ultimately, we find Victor at a family member's house, his grandmother's house in Mulberry. He really doesn't have a permanent address because, as the family said, don't set anything down if he's around. He steals anything and everything he can get his hands on, and he pretty well has alienated most of his family, but you know, Grandma will take you in when nobody else does. We arrive at the house. We take Victor Manns into custody. We have absolutely no problem when we arrest him. When we take him into custody, he confesses. And he tells us that he did it. He said that when he fled from the scene, and we asked him where the cell phone was, he said, well, when I fled from the scene, I tripped and fell and I broke it and I threw it away. Now, if that's not a bad set of circumstances, you're going to be charged with a murder and you didn't even get away with your loot, if you believe what he says. He said he pawned one of the iPads. He also apologized to the family, and he apologized for taking the life. And he totally cooperated in the sense that he said, his quote was, "I'm sorry for the soul that was lost Sunday night," and he apologized for the bad choices he'd made in life. He said, "I wanted to be a man and fess up." He went to a great deal of effort to tell the detectives that he had a heart and that I'm going to change. And he asked forgiveness from the Lord and from the flesh. Well, it's never too soon or too late to ask for forgiveness from the Lord. It's never too early or too late to ask for forgiveness from the flesh. But that business about I'm going to change, he should have rethought that a long time ago. He didn't want to or admit that he was going to change until he after murdered somebody, until after he murdered him. So he's in prison or in county jail on his way to prison, ostensibly for the rest of his life for first-degree murder. We charged him with robbery. The city of Lakeland still will have robbery with a firearm, and we are currently tying up the loose ends of that investigation. But once again, our homicide detectives did just an absolutely awesome job, and we have a 100% solve rate for 7 years? 8 years. 100% solve rate on our murders for the last 8 years. They're good. So here's a clue. If you're thinking about murdering somebody and you want any kind of chance to get away from, don't do it in Polk County, because we have caught 100% of the murderers in the last 8 years. Just pack up your murdering butt and leave the county. Any other questions?
Can you elaborate on how you identified him and working with,
It's all in the affidavits that we'll give you. It's so complicated it would not be of interest here, but obviously we had to go through IPs and identifiers of the cell phones but it's just amazing. It is just amazing. And the work the detectives did and the sense of urgency they operated with was remarkable. But you could see him elevate. He went from a theft to a robbery with a firearm where he actually hit the person to a murder. We knew we had to operate quickly because we didn't know when he would strike again, and certainly he had nothing to lose at this point because he'd already murdered one person. And as you can see, he's known for changing his looks. The person we see here certainly doesn't look like the guy above him, but it's the same person.
Sheriff, can you reiterate again, I know you talked about it before, but just what people should do when they're making an online sale transaction and meeting up with someone they don't know?
First off, whether you're selling a product, which you show up with, or whether you're going to ostensibly buy a product and you're going to show up with cash, it always has to be buyer or seller beware. And the reason for that is you don't know who you're dealing with. It's a total stranger. You could be dealing with the next Victor Manns Jr., who's there to steal your stuff, to rob you and stick a gun in your face, or to hit you with a gun, or worse yet, to shoot you with a gun. Or you could be dealing with a rascal like old Perry here, who has a long, illustrious history and cares for no one but himself. If you're going to do this, you need to be in a safe location. And if you don't understand what a safe location is, come to any of our district stations or our Sheriff's Operations Center between 8 and 5, Monday through Friday. And I would suggest to you that most thieves that wanted to steal from you, rob you, or pull a gun on you just won't show up at the Sheriff's Office. I would suggest that most of the police departments offer that same exact service. But you've got to understand that when you're dealing with folks, there is a great possibility that every now and then one of them is going to be a crook out to take your money or either take the item that you show up with. Be careful. Be safe. Be defensive.
Also, is there anything that could have been done to prevent this murder from happening in the first place if police were trying to figure out what was going on since about 10 days before?
You know, I can't answer that question. You'd have to ask the city police department what they were doing with their investigation in the meantime. There's so many different twists and turns that could have been occurring. We just don't know what's going on there. But certainly the police department should be able to give you the chronology of where those investigations were. Anything else?
So did Morrow and Blake know that this guy had a gun? Had he robbed them at
No,
that point too?
they didn't.
Okay.
He did not display the gun when he reached in and snatched the phone. But the way they were parked, Manns had to run around the vehicle. So when he ran around the vehicle, that's when Morrow got out of the passenger side with a shotgun. And Manns says, "I've got a gun." Pow, 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 pow.
Did Morrow get off the shot at all?
Not at all.
Did he bring the shotgun, and did he accompany his friend because they wanted to be safe?
He obviously brought the shotgun, and it was loaded. But I would suggest to you, here's a clue. When somebody's wanting to buy something from you at 9:45 on a Sunday night in an empty parking lot, be suspicious. But if he brought the shotgun for security, he didn't use it, and he died.
daytime?
Previous two were in the daytime. Same exact descriptions. When we showed our various witnesses the photo pack, they went, "That's him. That's him. That's him." There was no hesitation. When we tied all, and like I said, we got to tie the loose ends together, have a real solid case to include a confession. I think he's really remorseful that he killed the guy. But that's too late. He should have thought about the possible consequences and outcomes when he showed up to steal a cell phone with a gun in his pants.
Is this the first time he's killed a guy? I mean, I don't know what.
First time he's killed a guy that we know of. Because we've solved all the murders here in the last 8 years. Might have killed somebody someplace else. But his family says, don't set anything down. They say he just steals. That's what he does. And now he's in jail for the rest of his life.
So you said he had no fixed address. Where did he grow up? Did he grow up in Polk County?
He grew up in this area, as far as I know, for But this is the people, you know it, you cover this stuff every day. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir. These are folks that I've talked about today, these are the people that pose a threat to society. They steal nonstop, they rob nonstop. They're not normal America. And when you look to see these arrest histories, if somebody tells you we don't have a forgiving criminal justice system that tries and tries and tries to work with people, look them in the eye and tell them, you're lying to me. What are you trying to do? Because we have a criminal justice system that's based upon forgiveness, unless, of course, you've done some horrific act, such as shooting and killing a man, or shooting and trying to kill law enforcement officers, then we don't have any tolerance. But all this other stuff, they were given opportunity after opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, and I am so over someone saying, well, they ruined my life. I've never known one nonviolent arrest of any kind to ruin anybody's life, or two, or three. But I've seen a whole lot of people that intentionally ruined their whole own life and had no regard for anyone else until they got boxed up. And both of these folks got boxed up by their own actions. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Back to music.
Everyone's right.
This is what he was using, Freddie James, and this was his app, and this is a Facebook page that he has also. You can see where you're able to use that.
Hey, brother. How are you doing? It's good to see you. Where are you really? Anytime I can see you, it's a good day.